Okay, hi, it's Judy, and this is Wake Up Call 498. So, last time I talked about cultivating positive regard for difficult people. So, not discriminating among humans or any beings in terms of who deserves positive regard or metta and who doesn't, which is all about cultivating an attitude of kindness in the heart, no matter who we're faced with or what we're faced with. And I hope I didn't make it seem like it's easy, or I hope I didn't make it seem like it's easy for me, because it's not. Um, if it's easy for you, that's really wonderful. But for me, I spent a lot of time avoiding meta practice altogether, partly because I didn't understand how important it was, and partly because it was too hard. One teacher at the Metta retreat that I sat last month said that for years on long retreats, she would skip the Metta instructions, the Brahmavihara instructions that happen every afternoon, which made me feel so much better because that's when I would go on a hike every day. I would just go on a hike, I wouldn't go. So if it's not easy for you either to cultivate this heart that is facing towards the world and whoever or whatever is in it with an attitude of kindness, positive regard, then I'll just share or say a little about one thing that's helped me, which is to remember that I'm not in charge of anything, really. Uh, so saying that to a lawyer, which is me saying that to myself, right? It's a little bit of a joke because in a way, our whole job is to be in charge. And we're in charge of really big things. We're in charge of protecting people's lives or livelihoods or liberty or family dynamics or wishes for what happens after they die or ability to work or stay in the US, right? So, really big things. But in another way, we know a lot about not being in charge. So, one friend told a story at the Mindfulness and Law Conference. I'm wondering if she's here right now. If I think she's on vacation. Um, And she'd been working on this case on an she's an immigration lawyer, and she'd been working on a winnable case, which is rare. And the week before the final hearing, this was years that she'd been working. The week before the final hearing, the person stole a car, got picked up, and that was the end of the case. She wasn't going to win the case. They weren't going to get to stay here. And my friend had warned and warned and warned her client about being careful and not getting into any trouble. But in the end, she couldn't control what they did. Right. So we know as lawyers, as people working in the law, we know about not being in charge in those situations, where a client does something against our advice. We can't control for our client's decisions, and the consequences can be really awful. But even in situations like that, um, I know at least me, I can get judgy, right? I know what's best for them, or I think I do. And then what can come up when I'm trying to include in my meta practice people who don't take my advice is something conditional like, I would have positive regard for you, or I could if only you'd do what I think is right or just, or if only you'd done what I told you to do or not done what I warned you about not doing. And then the problem is this attitude seeps into my thinking because it's an inclination of the mind, right? And I'm thinking that way a lot. So it seeps into my thinking in relation to friends and family and colleagues and strangers and politicians and everyone. So it's one way that metta practice, the practice of positive regard, can get conditional. And I almost said, it's not in my notes, but I almost said corrupted. And maybe that's a better word because we either think we're in charge or we think we should be. And in either case, we believe that someone else would be having a better life if we were, or that the world would be a better place if we were in charge. So our minds are trained to do this. And this may not only be the lawyers, our minds are trained to do this We're trained to know what's best for our clients. I'm sure physicians are trained to know what's best. Many people are trained to know what's best, teachers. And we are in charge in many cases. And it's often a good thing when it's about the thing that they've come to us for help with. But then how do we let go of trying to be in charge of everyone else? And maybe even more consequentially, how do we stop conditioning our positive regard on others doing what we think is best? And it's hard for me because I pretty much still believe there are times when it's true, when me being in charge might very well turn out better, right? So it's that sticky thinking. But the meta practice of positive regard is about saying, I wish you well, not, I wish you would follow my advice because then you'd be well. So if we can't entirely let go of thinking we should be in charge, or I should say, if I can't entirely let go of thinking I should be in charge, then how to at least let go of being conditional in our well wishes, right? Conditional in the sense of wishing others well if only they'd follow our advice. So you can see I'm kind of working from both ends of this problem. And one of the teachers on the retreat that I sat said, start by practicing with a rock, which was, I thought was the weirdest instruction ever. But it's also kind of great because, uh, look, turn it, if you have a rock nearby, turn towards it right now and take a look at it. Or if you have a window, you can look out the window and look at a rock. Maybe you have a paperweight. Maybe there's something in your garden, or maybe there's a rock on your finger. Not sure about practicing with that rock or not. If you're my age, you might even still have your pet rock somewhere. Whichever rock you're turning towards right now, though, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, that whatever this rock is composed of, whatever its history, whenever it crumbles to dust, it's not about you, right? It's just a rock. It's just on its own journey through evolution. And the thing is, so are all the humans. So our friends, our family, they're not rocks, but they're on their own journey. No matter how much we wish they'd listen to us. Our beloved people, our children, our lovers, our parents, more generations, our best friends, they're on their own journeys. Even our politicians, or maybe especially our politicians, they're on their own journey. They're impacting others, including us. And in some cases, they're causing harm. But still, they're on their own journey, right? And so for me, it's remembering that and getting it into my bones. And I find that to be really helpful because it helps me remember I'm not in charge, which is a huge relief. And even when I forget that, it's at least a little easier for me to see others um, for who they are, for what they are, and still relate to them with positive regard. Not as humans who would do better if only they'd listen to me, but simply as heirs to their own karma, acting that out day in and day out. And that really helps me to keep my heart open too, and to keep it soft and malleable so that it doesn't get brittle or broken. And this is a real component of metta, of positive regard, and what it's speaking to maybe more than anything is metta or positive regard infused with equanimity, right? Infused with balance, infused with knowing in our bones that everyone's on their own journey. And what a relief that we're not in charge.